Hello, friends. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, to another episode of Warui Deshou's second stream, where we talk about decadence, not the societal or individual state of being, but Deca-Dence, or as it becomes in this show, Kabu-Dence. This wonderful summer anime from the creators behind Mob Psycho 100 that has been largely a delight this season. We've had a lot of great things to say about it. Will we continue to have great things to say about it as we talk about the ending? Stay tuned and find out. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I got a pretty significant trim on.
Too, by the way, but unfortunately, it happened several years ago.
Hey.
I'm on fire already. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
Very good. Greetings, everyone in chat. I think we've once again had to, let me pull back the curtain a little bit and to say we've had continue to have our technical difficulties with YouTube. So the stream popped up for just a few minutes publicly. When it is so, if you managed to get in, fair dues to you.
I dodged like security at a concert once. It's fine. It's just rock and roll. It's cool.
We hope to get all this for the patrons' benefit straightened out in the coming weeks. Our not only YouTube but Restream, what we used to push out our streams, have undergone some changes in how they talk to each other. And despite reading the literature and the blog, pardon me, and the tutorials, I have yet to get it to work. I'm convinced it's not my fault, but it is in fact the fault of.
I just said they end up looking like IKEA self-assembly instructions, so they were completely unhelpful.
Yeah, I know, right? It is very much that. But
this isn't the instructions for Restream. This is just how I assemble a Billy bookshelf. What the fuck?
Yes, it's just, what is this? Like, was this translated from Korean through Google? I don't understand. What was that? Was that your microphone or Vergalia's? Where on one of the first podcasts she read the instruction. That was yours, wasn't it? Where you read the instruction manual? It was just nonsense. Just incredible.
Oh yes, you're right. God, I'm sorry. When you said instruction manual, I thought you were referring to an IKEA thing, but no, this is my old microphone that was like oh my God, it was like so essentially like excellent for the making of the musics or something like that. And
yes, I'm
like, I want to believe that it was just written by the janitor while he was incredibly drunk.
Yeah,
like he like in a good way. Like he got it all written out and he hit spell check. And no, spell check isn't perfect, but it was good enough. And then he got even more drunk. Anyway.
This you can never underestimate the importance of good translation / localization for your international products.
Yeah.
Speaking of imperfect, these fucking glasses.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about decadence. I thought you were going to talk about decadence.
No. I mean, well,
but are you wrong though?
No, you're not wrong about it being imperfect. I wouldn't call it a perfect show, but to just show a bit of leg here when it comes to my opinions, I think it ended strongly enough. I'm fairly satisfied on the whole, right? I mean, being the generous grader that I am, I think it gets a lot of credit for what it does right for me, but we'll talk about where we think it missteps.
I'll show my leg as well. Like we're gonna be a cabaret act at this rate if we're gonna keep doing this. But I'll get my opinion out there. So make no mistake, the big gold standard yardstick for this entire year has been Keep Your Hands Off Isoken, which we've covered, and I think you and I agree, Doc. It's probably one of the best things we've ever seen. It's in my top 5 of all time, handily.
Woo!
No.
Wow. Yeah. I haven't thought about that, honestly, where it ranks.
But it's certainly, I think you would agree, one of the best things we've ever seen. And undoubtedly, the best thing we've seen all year, at least up until the conclusion of this season, where we were going to debate whether or not Decadence was going to dethrone it. Because I was of the opinion, and you might note my excessive use of the past tense here, if you're being attentive, I was of the opinion that it could very well do it. It could go beyond the Aizoken,
Plus Ultra.
Right. Yeah, it could go plus Ultra. And I'm sorry, but it didn't in the end.
Oh,
it was that close. It was that close to doing it. It stuck the landing. That's my often used metaphor. But the landing was a bit wobbly, and something fell out of the old red locker on the way down. That kind of thing. But make no mistake, this is still a phenomenal show. And you know what? I'm gonna be complimentary by invoking Aizoken in this sense, because Aizoken was a celebration of the creation of anime, warts and all, admittedly, and of the power of imagination, how one can translate that into entertainment and art. But the thing is, I think that Decadence is the exact kind of anime that could only be created if you had that spirit that you saw in Aizoken. In fact, call me crazy, here's my wicked headcanon. What if I told you that Decadence was the original anime produced by the Aizoken team in season 2? You could totally
I can believe
see it.
Sure. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it feels like, Aizoken was like, look at all these things we create, and then Decadence is, funnily enough, the parallel thing that says, look at what we did create, if you follow my meaning. Yeah. It's still an exceptionally brilliant show, and I honestly doubt we will see anything in the fall that will come even closer. It's just unfortunate. You had to be released. Like I said, even when we covered Aizoken, anyone who releases anything this year, I mean, first off, I'm so sorry because 2020 sucks. But secondly, you've got to go up against that standard, and that's awful. That's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's like saying, you're gonna, you and your little indie band are gonna go and play at a concert, and then, oh, I'm sorry, but wouldn't you know, the Rolling Stones have just turned up.
They just performed, and you have to follow them.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for that. But yeah, phenomenal show, and I will go into a lot of its virtues before the end of this podcast, along with my criticisms of the last episode, which are, in my opinion, the weakest of the run, with a little bit of that also falling on the shoulders of episode 10.
Yeah,
but weakest is a relative term.
Totally. I think I agree with the last thing you said, that the last two are probably, in relative terms, the weakest. Although, I mean, yeah, it's really, really hard to measure up to the quality of, especially the first half of this show. I mean, it just kept getting better and better. So, a drop in quality from that is something that still is a fairly solid, if not outright just good, piece of anime.
If you go from a 10 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10, that's still a 9 out of 10. Let's be fair here. Yeah. And just to put it again on the table, if the show had maintained that level of quality all the way throughout, including these last episodes where it floundered a bit, in my opinion, then I 100% would have given it my AOTY. It would have been Aizoken. No question, no debate in my mind. That's why I felt so convinced it could do it, because it had so consistently met that standard, and then just...
Yeah.
And the thing is, I have to say, and this is me being, again, an arrogant prick, so I apologize, but I think they could have done things differently to push it over that line. Even within the confines of the events that we get, and that's not me saying there needs to be such a radical redo of the way things turned out, but I think they could have just done a couple of things differently. And there's some things they actively did that really kind of bothered me a little bit. Plus, as a broader comment, I will say this: the opening 2 episodes of Decadence, it sets you up with this. It's going to be like a standard mecha show kind of thing, Okay, you've got your Attack on Titan people flying around, with these crazy devices, and then oh snap, episode 2 happens, and suddenly your head explodes from the revelation that it's actually just all a video game being played by cyborgs, and the humans are literally NPCs. That's what they are to them, really. And then after that point, we get all of our anti-capitalist stuff. We get all of our stuff about the prison industrial complex. We get things about narratives, all the stuff we discussed before. But the problem with the last 2 episodes is that they actually become the very thing that people thought it was going to be at the start of the show. which is just another, Attack on Titan, we fight a big bad guy, it's the end of the story kind of thing. And I'm like, it's not quite that bad. It's not quite that plain.
Yeah.
But it feels to me like they kind of, unfortunately became the very thing that they jokingly pretended they were going to be in the beginning. Which, yeah. Anyway, we're going to discuss that because we do have a certain order to this.
We do.
We have a certain order to this thing.
Well, listen, no. We do. But feel like I have to quickly respond and to just get my own thing out there because we're both vain and both appreciate getting our own opinions out there.
To a podcast.
I know. Yes, we
by two white men, two wankers.
Right.
Sorry, well, I'm the wanker. I apologize. When I say two wankers, I'm like, it's all on me.
No. Listen. It's not an unfair description of me either. So, but regarding the ending, I mean, look, I think they felt rightfully that they needed to get everyone involved, and they just kind of took. I don't want to be like this to sound churlish and say like they took the easy way out, but like they took a very straightforward approach to bringing everyone together and giving them something to do. Some of it more important, some of them less important, like roles to play in the final conflict. And I think that instinct is right, to want to do that for your characters. But I understand where you were coming from, with your kind of like, like this could have been like maybe more interesting, original, or elegant. I do think they do the big monster fight in a way that we'll talk about this in more detail, but I think that they did a couple crucial things in episode 11 to make the existence of this giant monster actually work for the larger themes that they were going for in the preceding stuff of the show. It doesn't cut against it the way that we really feared that it might when we talked about episode 10. So in that, I thought they succeeded. But and then I imagine we both have a lot to say about the ending. So why don't we, like you said, we'll get to patron questions, and I will turn down the volume of my Windows sounds so that they won't come through the podcast again. They're supposed to be muted. Why are they not?
If your PC starts playing Dispatch or some nonsense like that, I'm gonna have words with you, right?
I know. You should. Just deservedly so.
Just saying. All right, so just as a reminder for people who are coming into this format late, I mean, I don't know why you're like coming in like 2 episodes before the end of like our Decadence discussion has gone free to air, but hey, fair play to you if you are. This is our second stream format, so there is no plot recap except where appropriate as context for our talking points. So if I say this person, this was really deeply thematic and I don't explain why or what's going on, you're going to have no clue what I'm talking about. So I will, of course, chuck that in there. And that will also mean some reference to previous plot points and things we may have already discussed on the podcast. Doc's already alluded to some stuff with the Omega Gaddle, which, great final boss name. It's always got to have Omega in front of it.
Right, of course.
Yeah, or maybe something holy like Seraphim, but that's not the style of the show. But of course, we do have patron questions first, and you might be yourself, well, what's a patron? And my answer to that would be you if you subscribe for $3 or more, or rather, you can subscribe for $2 more, but to also ask questions as we go on our second stream format. Get yourselves to patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Give us your bank details, your PayPal, whatever you want to use. We might even potentially accept Ethereum if you want to throw that rubbish our way. No, I'm kidding. Of course, we don't do that.
We will accept your what's the green juice? Oxone. Send your Oxone through the internet.
You do realize, Doc, that someone's just going to literally pour Mountain Dew through that window behind you. That's all I'm convinced Oxone really is. And it would actually fit with the actual show if it turned out it was. It's just corporate exploitation.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be good.
I mean, God, Mountain Dew, like last time I had that in America, I saw wow, this is literally paint stripper.
You don't like it?
I just felt very chemically to me, but then again, I come from, I come from a part of the world where there's a lot of standards on food, which we have decided we don't want anymore. But I'll leave that discussion for a different time.
I could do, as astute observers have probably noticed, I fancy a Diet Mountain Dew on occasion. I've drunk a few while doing this podcast, but only because the Diet Pepsi in the machine downstairs is out. And so I am forced to turn to the Diet Mountain Dew. Wouldn't be my first choice, but it's an acceptable diet soda in my opinion.
Diet Mountain Dew, why don't you just call it Hill Dew? Because it's clearly not as good. It's not got the it's not as impressive.
Oh, Hill. I was like, what? Why? And then it hit me. Yeah. Right.
Okay, so Patreon questions. We have a couple this week from two people. The first of which comes from Kate Rose, and I'm actually going to go through both these blocks of questions simultaneously because I think there's a bit of overlap, and therefore I imagine we'd probably end up covering them all at once. So the first one is, were you satisfied with the ending? Why or why not?
Oh boy.
For me specifically, Kate asks, what would have made this your anime of the year? And then we have questions coming in from Gogo Toy Robot, who says, I mentioned on Twitter a hypothetical second series. Can you talk a little about what you'd want to see? So I'm bringing all these questions together because talking about one of them would inevitably bring up the other. Like, what would have made this my anime of the year would also lead into my hypothetical second series discussion. And also, were you satisfied with the ending? Why or why not? Do you want to field this one first or not, Doc? Because I feel like I don't want to come down so hard on this show already, but the more I thought about the ending since I watched it yesterday, the less happy I was with it for a couple of reasons.
Well, yeah, this is probably where I'm like the least enthusiastic about the show, was kind of how they wrapped it up post the monster fight. Because everything like involving how they defeated Omega, I kind of liked it. I was good with it. I thought, even at the last minute, they're still kind of putting puzzle pieces together as far as like the big picture of how different societal movements fit together, how different echoes of the past, even if they fail to bring success at the time, can like be a foundation for future revolution, all that sort of stuff. I was like, this is really neat. And then after that, I thought that they really sped walk through a lot of the important details that, I mean, it's hard because, you only have a certain amount of time, but you know how much time you have and you have to budget accordingly. And I felt like the show had been really, really solid on its attention to detail and not kind of leaving loose threads up to this point. And yeah, I just felt like, I don't know, everything kind of came together really, perfectly. And I just kind of was wondering, like, what about this? What about that? Like, I don't know, for example, why did the countdown to extinction stop when the Gadol was defeated? Like, why was it tied to the existence of Omega and not just like an order that the system sort of committed? It was like, okay, I'm going to execute this because all this is a problem. Like, why does the elimination of Omega, like, that's only part of the problem. Like, surely it considers the rest of it, decadence as it is now, still an issue. Like, I wasn't really clear on how that, overcame everything. Maybe I just didn't understand the sort of like gravity of what Kaburagi was doing, talking to like the core, gaining administrative power, but like it sure didn't seem like he was like eliminating it, because the system was very much like, see you later, fuck you, you're not gonna change anything. And like,
well, because they kind of didn't, to be honest.
They didn't really say anything, and like, and it just went away. And then 3 years later, they've constructed, we get to miss out on the construction of the society, of kind of the reformation of it with like
Yeah.
The two races living together and the Gadol living
Yeah.
as pets and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then the one thing that I thought was really annoying, honestly, was that Jill forgot that she had a data backup of Kaburagi. Like, and so
Yeah. Well, I don't think she forgot, actually. I think what happened was she gets that little, like, PDA given back to her by Minato. I found it 3 years later, and that is in itself like, okay, how the fuck did it take you that long to find it?
oh,
Whatever. But
is that what
but I think
happened?
it,
I missed
I
that
think
detail. Okay.
I think it was on stored on that, and that's when she was like, because she's going through all the files. It's like, wait, what's this? Um, okay, right. Let me try and say this up because there's a lot to talk about
Oh wait,
here.
hang
I
on.
think
Well,
oh,
I
go
still
on.
have one more detail to point out about
Keep it
this.
coming. Keep it coming.
Because so whether or not the little Dragon Ball radar was, given back to her then or whatever. Either way, she still forgot that she had this backup of Kaburagi because, Minato was like, "Hey, what's this red folder?" She's like, "Oh, when I did the upgrade of Kaburagi, that's when I bet." Holy shit! And then, she remembers and then she restores him. I'm gonna tell you why.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you why they restored him. I'm gonna tell you
Go
why.
on.
Because it's 3 years later, and now Natsume is old enough to legally fuck. That's it. That's what happened. End of story. Dojinshi, go forth into the world and be. I'm just saying. That's it. That's the little sister thing. Come home to roost. Now they will live happily ever after. So, but he'll be an avatar. He'll be an avatar though. Like, what happened to his cyborg body? Who the fuck knows?
My system's failing now as well. It's just the one that's in my head. Trying to comprehend that. All right. Okay. Where do I even begin? I'm gonna get the biggest complaint out of the way right now. Like the big, wide scope thing. I'm not gonna talk about anything related to Kaburagi just yet.
Okay.
Basically, they don't end up really changing anything. Okay, yes, there are some changes, like the fact that the tankers are now not actually fighting the Gadol and therefore not dying. But I don't mean to put this lightly. You literally still have people shoveling shit because we see Faye. You remember her doing that? She's shoveling green Gadol shit. And okay, yes, the robots are now getting in on it. It's a non-violent form of what they're doing, but the system's still exploiting them. They still don't really know the whole truth of it. Why are they doing this? This is the problem with this 3-year skip. It completely dodges what I think would have been an incredibly interesting thing for the show to look at. And I was almost convinced it was going to do in episode 11, by which I should probably explain. In episode 11, Natsume actually finally sees the robots in their regular robot form for the first time. There's that scene in which she meets Jill and the others, and she goes, "Hey, you're cute,"
which is awesome. I loved those.
Yeah,
scenes.
I love this scene. It's a great scene, where she basically starts acting as an ambassador of tankers to these people who otherwise would never see her in real life. She's bridging the gap between these two races. And I actually thought they were really going into this because bear in mind, Natsume herself is kind of a cyborg in her own right with her robot hand, which is the one she reaches out with. She is a literal bridge between these two groups of people in that sense. And that, by the way, was then me thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe the robot hand isn't literally just for the theme of they could give us something better that never did, which was still valid by her. That's not me complaining. That was good enough in its own right. But they took it a step further here. But then we get 3 years later, and so the next step in the challenge that Natsume was going to have to face was telling the rest of the tankers and the regular human people the truth. And how do they deal with the truth? Doesn't matter, we skipped it. Wizards did it, whatever, who cares? And I'm like, look, I'm not expecting the final episode to do that. That is a monumentally complicated thing, and it deserves a full season's worth of exploration. Because you'll have people a lot like, what was his name in the prison?
Donatello?
I cannot remember his name. Not Donatello,
Sarkozy?
not Sarkozy. No, the one
Oh,
who...
Turkey Turkey, yeah.
Turkey, yeah. You'll have people like Turkey for whom the truth will be too much for them to handle. They would rather live in the illusion that they had where they were literally going to die any given day by being murdered by Gadol than, the truth that they are now free from that threat, but they're no longer living in the world that they once knew. They've been lied to all this time. That would have been fascinating to go through an entire season. So that covers my answer to Ro's question of what my theoretical second season would have been. It would have been Natsume leading the charge now as person who has to basically like integrate these two races together, tell the humans, her fellow humans, the truth, and try and rebuild society.
When she was giving the tour, was she giving the tour to cyborgs? I didn't see. I was taking notes.
The tour? What tour?
Remember, at the very end, she's driving her Jeep that says, like, Natsume Tours or whatever.
I'm 99% certain it was just regular people.
Okay, fair enough.
But, yeah, that to me, like, was what I wanted them to do next. That in itself is a huge thing that could have taken a whole season's cover. And the thing is, like I said before about Decadence, like, it presents itself as an action show, but really it's got more to it than that. You could have still had action in that. You could have had fights between... In fact, never mind that. We see a fight between Donatello and Kurenai. So you could have had fights between the robots and things to like give yourself the action flavor, the sprinkling of spices and whatnot on top to keep it interesting. But we didn't get that. We got basically, the system persists. People are still being exploited. Nothing's really changed. Just a different flavor of it. It literally is, as the core said, what you do does not matter. Now, I think maybe the show is intentional in this because it wants to say that even if you can't change anything, you should still try. Go to your limits within a system. Well, I'm sorry to say, I find that notion very depressing in the world that we currently live in right now, where the media literally pulls... I felt like reticent to make this joke, but I'm sorry to say, like, it feels like we got the Joe Biden ending. Things won't fucking change. Fuck you.
Well, I don't know. I strongly disagree with that reading of it myself. I mean, I think the show respects its audience. I think that much is pretty clear. And given everything that has been like laid out, I think that there are certain conclusions we can draw based on the time skip and based on what we're presented with. That like if the system that's running the Yamato goes away and Minato is now against the system, and like you have all these cyborgs on the surface and you have Natsume who knows the truth. I mean, if they're living together side by side, cyborgs, not the avatars, but like the actual cyborgs and the people, I think it's pretty like safe to assume that everybody understands what's happening. I think
yes.
Minato. So the noble lie has been exposed, right? And you have Minato as like the administrator of this new system of government. I mean, societies. Unless you're like a big anarchist, and even if you are an anarchist, like, I don't know, I feel like that there's you need some kind of leadership, some kind of administration to handle the problems of an urban environment like that, especially when you're bringing together these two cultures. So the fact that some people are still shoveling Gadol shit, I mean, that, like I think Cesar said in chat, I mean, that's still a job that needs to be done. It would have been interesting if they had a human in space on the big ship in, the government, like an actual human.
Sorry, I just imagine Natsume in space, like, as she's just trying to figure out how it works.
Natsume would never.
She's in a little spacesuit, and then, like, you've got Minato saying, hey, wasn't she meant to be here, like, 5 minutes ago? And he's, like, in front of this window, and she just flies past it, struggling to figure out how to make it work.
So funny. Like,
that would be great.
I think, if I could, a little bit more mixing together of the two with the jobs. I mean, couldn't have gone amiss, and shoveling the Gadol dung, now that the cat is out of the bag in terms of what it is and how it is important to the cyborgs, I mean, could be, for all we know, be treated as a much more important job. I mean, it's still nasty looking and, everything. But I don't think any, this sort of same kind of exploitation exists that happened in the show. Certainly the cyborgs are no longer being exploited. And it doesn't appear to me like on the surface that the humans are still being exploited. I don't think that we have to draw that conclusion. Now, does it preclude other forms of exploitation? And is this a sort of perfect form of God? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? Bad things could still happen. There's still a lot of potential for season 2. But so my issues are like that we kind of didn't. I would have loved to see, like you, more detail on how we got there.
Yeah. If I may just clarify my point, I 100% get what you're saying there, with all of your points, and I would agree with them if they'd been built up to that. To go from, I know it says 3 years, but I'm sorry, but saying that 3 years have passed is not good enough for me. You need to show the transition. You need to show things changing over time. Because simply going from the template that we have at the moment, which is you fight the Gadol 2, we coexist with them, and you're going to farm like the crap now and whatever. Just jumping from that in such a short frame of time, without even showing any of the characters coming to like realize their new world. That's why I feel it's still exploited, because it's presented basically as the same thing, just a different flavor, rather than having the necessary detail behind it to make me think differently.
Well, I mean,
that's my problem with it.
So the fact that they're living together doesn't move you, like that there doesn't appear to be any more like we're treating this as an MMO, like this is just our life now on the surface of this planet. Well, mostly
there's narration over it though, saying, "Hey, go and like build your farming gear and all that." It's still being treated as a game,
right? Yeah, that's true. I guess like the fact that they come from this culture of gamification to incentivize different things, I guess that still continued. But I think as long as I think you could still have that incentive structure and not be fundamentally exploitative. I think that there's a way to do that. I don't think that a gamified, society built around that kind of incentivization necessarily has to be bad.
No, I agree. But I wish the show would back that up with more exploration of how we get from the point before the time skip to afterwards.
Okay, so this is where we agree. I would have loved to see more.
That is the core of my problem. And in the absence of that explanation, I have to simply fall back on what the show has shown us before, which is this is a system that is very explicitly stated in that very same episode. Things will not change. And we've gone through cycles of this before, where the game's been different, and the game is now different again.
Upgrading.
So it doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel like, it feels like a Pyrrhic victory, if you want to call it that, And that's why I think bothers me. Like, we hear all the time in real life about how, like, this is why I said made the Joe Biden joke, because, he'll be better, certainly. And by the way, that's my, tacit, explicit endorsement of, I don't like him, but fucking vote for him anyway. But anyway, point being is that he'll be better, but it's a marginal thing. And I'd rather have more narratives that say, hey, you know what, maybe we can completely tear this thing down and start fresh. That was Kabaragi's actual goal. But he didn't really do that.
I don't know, I think... Didn't he, though? I mean, look at the degree of authoritarian control over the lives of all the citizens. I mean, that's... The fact that that's not there is like a huge deal. And now their society is free to evolve in whatever direction they would want to. It's only been 3 years, and so to me, it actually feels more organic that they would try something out that kind of hews close to some of the structures that they had in place before, but just do it in a way that's more inclusive, less exploitative, And Cesar makes a good point about the farming. I mean, the cyborgs don't really need to farm. So it really is a human thing.
No, they do. They do, because they still need Oxyon to survive.
But were they farming Oxyon, or weren't they just getting that from the Gadol poop?
Well, if they're getting from the Gadol poop, or they're farming it directly, the point is moot. They still need it.
Right. Well, so I mean, I don't think that they would need. Well, they could be helping to help the humans, or they could be not doing it because they don't need to. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Let me pull this back. Everything we're discussing, the show should have explained. It shouldn't have been left up to our speculation. The show's done now. This is why I'm saying I would have liked to have had more time to see the transition, so we're not like going back and forth about why these things, like whatever, you know. Sometimes this is what I'm saying, and this is why I'd also make the argument, call me crazy, but I would have actually been very content if the show had ended literally at the point in which, you know, before the time skip, where Kabaragi's like corpse, if you want to call it that, switches off.
Sure, I could see that. I would have been bummed out.
Very bittersweet bum out ending. Don't get me wrong, but I would have been content with that, because I'll say what's popped in my head. Like, you remember how I discussed Final Fantasy VII previously, or rather the remake, when we were talking about it last time? Here's the thing, right? I think a lot of what happens in the very end of Final Fantasy VII remake, particularly a certain boss fight, is there more because I think they were afraid that they couldn't necessarily guarantee they'd be able to do it in part 4 or 5 or whatever, because they may not have gained to make it. That's my feeling on that. There's certain elements that feel to me like we got to put this in because we didn't know we'd get to do it later down the line. There's certain scenes in that game that feel very clearly like, hey, it's not the time that we're going to do it later, but if the game failed to sell or they didn't get a chance to make it, then well, we'll do it. And that's why I think this time skip exists rather than like opening to the possibility of season 2, because again, we live in an anime, you know, creative culture where it's the 12 episode core. That's it. It's very unlikely you'll get a second season unless it's based on a manga, more than likely, and this is definitely not. So
I think that's why I'm looking. I'm willing to give it a little bit of slack, and then
I do have some sympathy for that. You know, don't get me wrong.
And all the good.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, and just there's that aspect, the economic reality that you speak about, and then, you know, all the goodwill that it's built up, and the fact that like I'm watching it, not expecting the like 100% hand-holding. I am expecting the show to be meticulous, which I don't think it was as meticulous as it could have been.
I definitely agree. I don't want 100%. I want it to at least do more than it did, which was, here's the future and everything's rosy now, and we're not going to explain anywhere near enough of it to make it feel truly satisfying.
Yeah. And there's two ways you could look at it. I mean, like, if you're gonna, like you were doing, like abstracting this as a text, you know, in a vacuum, you know, you could definitely, like, I think, take the ending to task a lot more. If we want to talk about the material reality of the situation and it as a production, I do think cutting it a little bit of slack for just those economic realities that you speak of is warranted. Which is, it's, you know, it sucks, but it is the world we live in.
True. But there's something else I need to discuss with the ending that I feel is going to generate some heated discussion in its own right. So I've talked about the big picture stuff here. Kaburagi coming back from the dead. I think this was a mistake.
Okay.
And I think this was a mistake for a couple of reasons. First of which, even before I discuss why I think bringing him back, period, was a mistake, I think simply having him appear, like at the end, as briefly as he did, felt a bit cheap to me. What? What?
Just think. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking about the ending moments and picturing your face, your face, very dissatisfied when Kaburagi like walks over that sunset hill.
I kind of was disappointed when, because as soon as Jill mentioned I have a backup, I'm like, oh, for God's sake. Because first off, like I felt very bittersweet about Kaburagi dying. Like he had wanted to take his own life at the start of the show. Make no mistake. And now he has given his own life, but he's given his own life to basically, as much as I say otherwise things haven't changed, they still have for the better. He has done a wonderful thing for everyone. And he did that without any hesitation or any like remorse or any regret. That was a fucking brave thing that he did. Make no mistake. And so, again, this is also why the 3-year thing bothers me, because while 3 years pass in the show, it's mere seconds. It doesn't like marry up in terms of time for things to sink in, you know?
Is that why you hated Die Buster? Because the time skip? Just the immediate time skip.
Oh man, I need to go rewatch Die Buster at some point. Maybe I'll reevaluate it and like it more. Although you mentioning that has made me smile though, because I'm thinking of Groovy Magic now in my head.
Yeah. Oh, always a positive thing.
I'll never say I dislike that. No way. So first off, I do think it was cheap for him just to come back as briefly as he did. even just beyond the reason why I didn't want him to come back. The first of which is to say the fact that, the impacts of that has not even sunk in before we get the out, which is the backup. That to me was dumb.
Dojinshi, baby.
I'm sorry, but it was dumb. And here's the other thing, though, right? Like, Natsume has learned from Kaburagi throughout the show. And one thing that I think the 3-year skip does show, and it's also really great how it all ties together. Because I should mention about it, Kaburagi, when he dies, like, you remember how the opening of Decadence, the show, episode 1, Natsume's father found a damaged dead robot in the ruins. And then the show pretty much ends with Natsume doing the same thing.
Right.
Bookends.
Yes.
Bookends, telling you. So that's great in of itself. But then we see like how she is like evolved into her own person now. Like she's no longer a tanker, but she's now doing things for herself. Like she said, I'm going to build myself my own arm, which by the way, propeller arm is amazing.
It's good. Yes.
That is literally an Izoken gadget. You think I was kidding when I said that, about Izoken in this show. Like it is literally an Izoken gadget. It's great. I love it. But she's now like out there exploring the world, guiding people. Like she's like gone beyond the need for him as presented here. Like, and that's the way I always saw their relationship. It was mentor and mentee.
That's interesting.
And he's given her the tools, like, to live in this world. Like and indeed that was part of what the problem of what Kaburagi was doing, where he taught how to fight, but he never educates her in the way things really work, to the point where we had that heartbreaking scene where she says, I've got to be more useful. And that's his fault. So the way I see it is that, like, I didn't see their relationship as anything like they were friends, don't get me wrong. They weren't completely cold, like, university professor to like bored student or anything like that. They were friends. Don't get me wrong there.
There's more doujinshi for you.
Staying
after class with Professor Kaburagi.
Yeah. So I just thought to myself, like, you know what, like, she gets to go off into the sunset. He's given her the skills to live her life now, given her the inspiration she needs. She doesn't need him anymore to push her forward. But now he's back. And we don't even get to hear a conversation between them. So that's what also gets me. It's funny enough, not for Kaburagi's benefit that he's back. Like, he doesn't get to see her again, because we don't hear his thoughts on it. But rather it's for hers. And I'm like, her reaction is understandable. Of course it is. Like, she thought he was dead and he's back. That's great. And that is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But narratively speaking, like, he did not need to return.
Yeah.
It just felt to me like they completely undid a strong like finish for Kaburagi, like a good send off for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I definitely see all that. Here's where I come at it from. And it is, speaking of Die Buster, I come at it from the point of view where I'm like, I don't really care. Like,
I don't care.
I don't really care.
I don't give a shit.
Like, I don't care. Like, to me, like, the fact that he came back, like, elicited no reaction from me. Like, him coming back or him staying dead, like, it's weird. I mean, stepping away from it, like, I can sort of see the merits of either choice. I think there's a lot of literary merit to having him stay dead. I think that there is some fandom merit to keeping him alive, bringing him back. But, I was kind of like, my mental space was like, well, the show has accomplished its goals largely, and the spirit of the show has, like, whatever they kind of do with the ending. And I was being serious, not, about being annoyed by like them like opening the door a little bit and us just only getting a teeny glimpse into like how the society of these two species like went from point A to point B. But I also think like that all that stuff from the moment they killed Omega, like, is just sort of like whatever to me in a way, because the spirit of the show and its ideas and its like fervent anti-establishment, anti-capitalist nature, and kind of how it shows that in a lot of ways we take for granted, even like we're being exploited, no matter if we're poor, rich, whatever, is so like just sharp and on point and incisive that I think like thumbs up to the show, but I just couldn't find myself like couldn't find it within myself to be like happy that Kaburagi was back or annoyed that he was back. I just kind of it's fine, sure.
Question I would then pose to you then, Doc, if your reaction to that was neutral, could that not simply have been, is that still not an argument itself for it to be replaced with something else?
Oh, sure. I mean, I would have been fine. Do something else is fine. I mean, that's fine. If this is the way they want to try to do a season 2, you know, if they're laying the groundwork for that, sure. But if they want to do it a different way, fine. Because, you know, Natsume, I like seeing the ideas through to the end was my chief concern with it. And then Natsume playing a significant enough role to where it didn't feel like that she was somehow overshadowed by Kaburagi. I thought that they just crossed the finish line with that second one, and I thought
we'll get to that in a bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And I thought the first, and regarding the first one, I thought that they did pretty well. So that's why I would say on the whole of the show, I'm satisfied. You know, even though the ending was not personally to my taste. Like it was, some parts of it were kind of fascinating. But I thought, I don't know, just like didn't come together in the same way, as the rest of the show. So
you know what I'd be glad to see more of? Jill and Minato. Like, they have a wonderfully sassy working relationship. I would have totally had a solid 2 minutes for them just doing the most mundane administrative shit, but just with them snarking with each other. That'd be great.
I just want to take a moment to just shout out Michio Murase and man, what a great job you did. I mean, you know, this is a person who is Mari Itami in B&A and who is more famously Susie from Little Witch Academia. And here she does such a great job as Jill. Like in these episodes, I feel like she gets more dialogue than ever, and it's amazing. She's such a good character. She was, I think, one of the, I don't want to say the only part of the show, but she got stronger as the show went on in these episodes, where other parts of it you might feel got weaker. Like her performance ruled. She was great as a character.
She rocks the voice actress when she's given dry characters to work with. Mm-hmm. When the dialogue is dry and it's perfect. Yeah, she's great. So good. I want to give big ups basically to all the voice actors and actresses in this. All the voice cast did a stellar job in my opinion.
They did.
Kaburagi's got his big yelly moments, but his more quiet ones are also quite well done. Natsume, she's pretty sweet, but also she does a great job. Her voice actress does a great job when she has to be more emotional as well. The rage is handled well, and even Donatello pulling the Independence Day finishing move, you know. That's what it was, and you know I'm right. Yeah, it was whatever his name was, flying the fighter jet into the UFO. Although he of course survived. Oh god, I don't want to see Roland Emmerich's version of Decadence.
No. And then it's funny that everyone, including me, I forgot that was just his avatar, and so everyone was crying, and he's just like, "What? What are you crying about?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was just his gear avatar."
It was so very Donatello from saying, "I'm not doing such a boring mission."
I know.
That was great.
That was awesome.
So there's actually a final question that Kate was asked. There are more we have to cover from her, but it feels relevant to throw in at this point, which is, if you could do so, would you add a 13th episode, and what would it show? Right. Basically for me, it's much the same as I said for season 2. I would want to see, here's how I'd pitch it basically, right? It would not be picking up at the end of the show, where Kaburagi returns, I'd have it be the immediate aftermath. This would be like one of those special episodes that you get to see occasionally that don't have to follow strictly like time continuity where it must be after the end of the show. It could slot seamlessly into a part before. So I'd have it be in the immediate aftermath. Like Kaburagi's gone, dead for all they know, and the humans and the robots meet for the first time, and that's when we get the thing I want to see. Now, I'm not saying that it solves everything in a single episode, but I want to see it end at a point where you can see how Natsume is going to eventually, with enough time, with enough hard work, guide these two groups of people to coexisting.
I could get on board with that. I really could. I don't have a lot of great ideas for a season 2. Beyond that I would like to see. I mean, they
Two
could
decadences, punching in left hook, right hook. There you go. There's your season 2 right there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could like do a far future thing and take a different political tact on it. But do you want to see a second season of this now? Or are you still? Because I don't know. I kind of found myself where I'm like, you know what, like I'm good with it for now. I think it accomplished what it set out to, and unless like you're saying, unless they tell a story of the new society reconstructing itself and getting to like achieving the sort of thing that they show at the end of episode 12, then I don't know if I'm interested in going back in for anything else.
The irony being, again, if they had not done the 3 years later time skip, then I would have absolutely loved to see a season 2. But now they've gone 3 years later and everything's quite peaceable. Like, unless they did a season 2 in which a brand new villain emerges of some description,
right,
which is certainly doable. Don't get me wrong, but the thing is that of course means that I would have no interest in seeing it until I know that it's good enough to follow up. Because now I suppose I should mention, like, I feel really, really bad for Studio Nut for 2 reasons. One of which we've already discussed, which is that it feels to me like they had to, play some of this ending safe. We've got to get the big moment. We've got to get the big drill punch in with the OP play, which was good. It was great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it'd have been much braver if the end episode was completely devoid of any action. It would have been. Whether or not better is up for debate. But anyway, so that's one thing. But the second thing is, how the fuck do you follow this up? In general.
Oh boy, you mean like the studio's next
What
production,
do you do next?
or
what do you do next? I mean, like, the thing I'm thinking of this in my head is, Trigger, when they came on the scene, they did Kill and holy shit, was that a thing? And then of course they had to do stuff after that. Like, how would you feel like that's the curse of success? Like, you've done something incredible and everyone's just eyes are on you now. Like, people expect a lot. And that's awful.
All too often, right? I mean, it's a great example with Trigger. Like, so instead of trying to make another amazing original work that will be judged against what you just did, the safest play is to just do a light novel adaptation. do the Studio Nut will do its when supernatural battles become commonplace, and then people will just be sad, except for super fans of the light novel.
I can't wait for them to do something set in a high school. Yay!
All right, yeah. This is what we need. This is what this is it. The Decadent City high school life. They need to cut to far future. You have the grandchildren of Kaburagi and Natsume, or the grandchild daughter in school, and there's still latent discrimination against the lowly NPC humans or whatever. And then she has to navigate the treacherous social waters of school in this society.
Summer 2022. God, that was hard to say for some reason. Coming summer 2022 from Studio Nut, a brand new anime. Ichigo, or whatever the fuck his name is. He's a 16-year-old boy who's unremarkable in every way until he discovers the power inside. And it's accompanied by his 5 female friends of varying hair colors. He sets out on a journey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nothing would kill my interest quicker, even if it was from this studio, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, I'll go one better. Coming from Studio Nut in 2022, a brand new isekai.
Great.
Fucking wonderful.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
not an all isekai or bad claim. This is we're playing the percentages. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, not all isekai are bad, but unfortunately, not all isekai don't feature endorsements of slavery either. So you really are, you know, really are taking a chance these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Financed by Crunchyroll.
Yay! Love it.
Perfect.
Bloody love it.
When you see them on the
Okay.
production committee, go run.
Yeah.
Is that do we have more questions or no?
We do.
Okay.
So this is actually again another case where questions overlap a little bit. So from Kate we have: do you feel Natsume and Kaburagi were equal protagonists, or did the show favor one over the other? Who did it favor, and why do you think so, if that's the case? And from Go Type Robot, at the start of Decadence, Natsume is set to be the lead. However, the middle of the show switches to Kabu as lead, or both as co-leads, depending on the episode. By the end of the show, do you feel both leads were well served? And if so, why? So, similar-ish question here. My original thinking on this, and we discussed this last time, was I felt that Natsume served the function of a character manufactured not for the benefit of themselves, but for another. And so I'm clear on this again. That's not a bad thing. I'm totally, but in of itself necessarily, like the concept itself, isn't good or bad. It depends on what you do with it.
Yes.
And I had some problems with the fact that, like, you know, the reveal comes to Natsume too late, such that all her actions are in the confines of, like, you know, hey, we're going to repair this wall. And it felt to me like a bit pointless. By the way, I love that there was a subtle callback to that, because the entirety of Decadence reassembles so ridiculously quickly. And look at what the poor tankers had to do just to do one patch of wall. Like, literally, Minato could have pushed the repair wall button, which, if you've ever been to a bowling alley, like, you know, you've got, like, the soda drinks button, like, next to your settings. Like, that's what he's got there. He's got repair wall, light refreshments, you know, Netflix and chill button. That's how easy it is for him to get it fixed, and he just doesn't do it. So I like that callback. But I think that once the truth was revealed, like, and I really, again, wish they'd expanded on this further, her role in firstly speaking to the robots is pretty good. I like that. I like that she started to, like, act as a mediator. She was totally okay with them. But the thing is, I think the show is very, very clear on the fact that it is wasting Kaburagi's favor by the fact that, well, he's the one firstly giving his life to save the world, and secondly, the entire sequence of flashbacks that he has while he's plugged in to cause Decadence's Limited release. That to me seems like it's pretty clear what the show's telling you, which is that Natsume is an inspiration to him, but just because she's an inspiration to him doesn't mean that she herself is a lead or an active agent in this. Heck, you know what I would... Man. Crazy idea. Imagine this. Imagine... I'm just... This is like fucking fanfic now, but I'm going to roll with it because screw it, right? So imagine that Kaburagi's about to fire the Decadence cannon one final time, but for some reason he can't. It needs to be manually triggered by someone. Ooh.
I'm sorry, I missed part of that. What needs to be manually triggered?
Right, so imagine like Kaburagi, like, you know, is charging the Decadence drill cannon. Gurren Lagann reference possibly, as Cesar alluded to in the chat before, maybe. Point being, he's charging it for the final hit against the Omega Gaddle. Like, you know, the theme's playing, and he tries to fire it, and oh no, it doesn't work. We have to go to a manual backup.
Well, well, tell me what the material difference was between that and what actually happened.
You misunderstand, Doc. I'm saying the manual backup would have to be fired by someone else.
That's what I mean. But what actually happened? Like, he couldn't get through the noise until Natsume did the equivalent of slapping the TV.
You misunderstand. Like, he's getting the flashbacks, but that's just something he's remembering.
No. I'm saying she punched the side of the ship, which is what helped. It was the equivalent of shaking a television. That disrupted the noise from the system.
Just my aerial here, yeah.
And that is what, like, it is depicted in the show as being like a physically significant event. Her busting her arm on the ship is a thing that led to the firing of the cannon. What?
She gets sucked inside it as well at one point. Don't forget.
Yes.
When she's bringing the spare part in with Kurenai. Look, okay, well, let me make it clear.
What is a little
Natsume...
okay? The chat. So Caesar says like, Natsume literally didn't have like. Without Natsume, there is no Kaburagi. There is no, and not just in the way that like, if Batman's parents weren't killed, there would be nothing in the long pages of it's not like anything that indirect.
I'm sorry. I have to stop you there. Like, can we have like a scene in an outtake where Kaburagi finds Natsume in the alley, like at the very beginning, says, "Hey kid, have a dance with the devil in the pale
moonlight," right? Yeah, can't make an omelet, etc. But no, like I don't mean like, oh, look at the long tail of effects. Look at this butterfly effect. No. Natsume, in every action Kaburagi takes in the show, is directly either helping him physically or influencing him such that like his beliefs and his motivation are energized and pushed forward. This show is a show that about how powerful ideas can be, and that I think elevates Natsume's role because she is the one who changes him and helps him believe in a better world, who helps him like understand what it means to give everything even to the last minute and not give up. Like, and again, and if you're a stickler and you're like, I don't care about the show privileging, or not privileging, but like countenancing how important ideas are and beliefs are. Like, what I want is her pulling the trigger or whatever. Then I'm sorry, I will go back again to her punching the side of the ship. And immediately after that, the system crackles, fades, and goes away, and then Kaburagi is able to activate the decadence and take control. That is presented in a causal fashion. That is not a coincidence. The show textually is saying there's a causal relationship between the two, and it is the chain of events that directly lead to them being able to kill the monster. Seriously, I don't know what more you want, unless you want Natsume jacking in, but she can't. She's not a cyborg.
No, Doc, you misunderstand. I'll put it cleanly. If you have Natsume be the one who has to actually fire it, then that means that she would end up killing Kaburagi by doing so. And so you can have a moment of her debating that in her head. Make her a more active participant in this.
But she wouldn't do it. I don't want her killing Kaburagi.
No, do I? But like, I'm talking again from the perspective of a writer here. That would make for great drama. But I'm also saying
I think that would suck.
Well
the themes would be undercut for me if like, well, what you have to do to create a better world is to kill your friend or be willing to kill your friend. I kind of dislike that. I like Kaburagi being willing to sacrifice his own self.
Didn't Minaso do that by like doing his part in like getting Decadence ready and prepping the prepping it for battle?
Well, he was taking his own life in his hands because he was on board on the bridge and he was willing to be killed. Like he was right there, and he just like he didn't fire the gun into the heart of Kaburagi or whatever. He was like, we're here together. I'll flip the switch for you, and then I will go I'll put you in the pilot's chair, and then I'll go get in the co-pilot chair. We are both taking these risks. Whereas, I just would have felt bad if she had to basically fire the gun that killed her mentor and best friend. Like, to me, that would... I feel like everyone acting in a sort of this, like, free and authentic way to sacrifice parts of their body, be it their arm, their life, their avatar, whatever, like, is more... I think, like, to me, that, like, makes it ring truer and speak more to me.
That's fair. I was just pitching it because I thought sort of like, what would I do differently in order to get Natsume involved in this? Because I think the point that me and a couple of the chat try and make is that we want Natsume to be involved in such a way that it's for her own benefit and not for Kaburagi's. Like, Kaburagi literally has a hump he has to get over in the final episode, which is firing the cannon, and it's her inspiring that does that. That's all fine. Don't get me wrong. That's good. That's great. But what's the hump that Natsume has to go over? What's her final challenge at this point?
So her whole arc is going from someone who kind of lives under expectations, lives under the dictates of her friends, her teachers, authority, and everything like that, to like, making choices for themselves. And when we left her last time, she had to deal with the repercussions of that, saying like, well, if you're going to be this autonomous person, like you also have to deal with like the truth of the world. And she took that on, and she still chose to help people. She still chose like to, not like she chose the path of like helping everyone, helping the cyborgs, being friendly with them, helping her boss. Like, I don't know, like it just to me felt like the natural kind of progression and the end point of her arc of like the benefit is she's choosing to do this of her own accord, and she can now, and it's what she wants to do.
Okay, fair enough. I think for me, like maybe I'm just conflating like something that would seem visually more impressive than what actually happens. But I think that we can agree, and you said as much when you said it just barely put her across the finish line before, that I think we can agree the show is weighted in favor of Kaburagi being the person who does the most, who has the most impact on the events of the show, who the show is arguably most about.
Yeah, I think it can depend on the framework through which you're watching the show. I mean, I think if you are concerned with, like physical, direct, getting your hands dirty causation, a very kind of material way to look at things, then he does, because the show has sort of set it up to where like he is part of a species that can do that. But again, I do think that just looking at it solely that way undercuts like, I don't know, just undercuts Natsume's rightful place in the story, and how the story from the very beginning has said Natsume is important because the beliefs that she has impact other people, and that's important. The show is about, revolution. It's about overthrowing established oppression, overthrowing immoral norms, and all those things require action, but all those things require ideas and ideology to fuel that action. Both are important. You can't have one without the other. And so I think both happen to be very, very vital to the show and what it says. Absolutely. So I think it really just does depend on your point of view, honestly. I'm steadfast in this.
When I say that I think the show favors Kaburagi, though, like, let me be clear. Like, if I had to ratio that, I would probably say it's 60-40, or even maybe 55-45. Like, Natsume's contribution is still significant, don't get me wrong, and I don't think there's anything wrong necessarily with her contributing in a way that is mostly focused around being inspirational, because that's sometimes how things work. But I also can't deny that I can see the complaints as well, that we wanted more big moments that she got involved in later in the end. But again, sometimes a little moments. But again, it's like you say, framework.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. So, like in this kind of a show, when there is a noble lie happening, this sort of grand narrative that that everybody buys into in some way or another, and the humans are the most deceived, but the cyborgs are also being exploited and are part of it. Then you're naturally going to have an imbalance, an epistemological imbalance. There's going to be, if you're going to bring people from different parts of that spectrum of the society that you've made, like one is going to know more than the other. If someone, because if you've enacted this noble lie, then the only way to get out from under it is, I think, having someone in the know undermine it. And so you're going to have to come together someone who knows more and someone who knows less, and that's going to seem like a little bit of an imbalance. But to tell the kind of story that is about overturning a noble lie, I think you kind of have to do that. And it maybe seems weird and maybe set this tone originally in the show that like, well, Kabaragi's the real MC because he knows more. But I think her journey from total ignorance of the noble lie to like having her worldview shattered and then kind of accepting the truth and choosing to work toward a better world is super compelling. And I mean, I guess you could have this noble lie story where like someone who's totally ignorant, like scrapes at the fringes and pulls loose threads and then finds it out. But like, to me, like, I guess that just sort of makes, that discredits the noble lie enough to where I just sort of don't really believe in it, and kind of like makes the oppressive regime seem cartoonish and like, oh, why didn't someone find this out before? It's so dumb. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I do see where people are coming from if they think that the show is really a Kaburagi show. But I just respectfully, I think, disagree with that. But I do, especially if the person is like, this is all about Kaburagi and nothing about Natsume.
No,
where it's like you're a much milder kind of push towards Kaburagi. Yeah.
60-40 definitely.
Mm-hmm.
The irony being though is that if it was all a Kaburagi show and they did do a season 2 as all about Natsume, then that would be fine. Simply it all being a Kaburagi show on its own, were it that, isn't inherently a bad thing. It's just a question again of what you do with it. But I don't think we will get season 2 regressively, as much as I would like that. But that being said, like, at least if Studio to do something else, I say difficult second album, but I am there for it. I am all over that shit, that's for sure. All right, that brings us to the end of our Patreon questions. Thank you very much to everyone throw those in. If you do want to ask us questions as we go along through a show, be it our Stream of Thought, second stream, or Deshou the third series, get yourself onto patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Check out the tier rewards. You get the ability to ask questions equivalent to the pod that you get access to. So Stream of Thought is at the $2 tier, second stream at the $3, and Deshou the third at the $5, and plenty of other perks in there as well. All right. So let's get on to talking points. And the irony is, I've probably said everything I want to say just from the questions for the most part, because there's a lot to talk about. But I suppose we should also, I'll pitch the floor to you first, Doc. Like, do you have any talking points from what we've already discussed? Go on.
Well, I've only tiptoed over the ground, but I just want to, I guess, make it reveal all as far as like my journey through episode 11, because I was like kind of getting ready to bury the show, or at least bury the last 2 episodes and just be like, what are they doing torpedoing themselves with this Omega Gatto bullshit? Like, rather than saying like, is this some sort of appeal to like the conservatives among us who, even after seeing all of the preceding 9 episodes or 10 episodes, are like, you know what? I'd still be cool with a big, giant, overarching system regulating everything, because I feel like order is so great. Oh no, it turns out like there's no system could do that perfectly. There will always be flaws inherent in the system. Oh no.
Oh, because, as I said, they just wanted to have a big action finale, even though it's not really justified, at least as I saw at the time. There.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was thinking early on. I was like, man, I want an anime that goes all in on this idea of like the system's not bad because it's like sort of imperfect in its reach and grasp over control of its citizens. Like, I want, the perfect system, the quote unquote perfect system, right? Having like perfect control, but like the show still saying, fuck that. Like, we don't like this because it's immoral, it's inhumane, it's unjust. And so that's why we topple it. Like, that's what I was thinking, right? And then they do the thing that I think saves the bacon thematically of these last two episodes, and the show, the system rather goes, well, like, this is all part of the loop. It does the whole architect matrix thing. Like, well, we prepared for the one, and, you're the anomaly is just part of
only
this.
I know the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices.
Right.
I'm sorry, but the architect looks like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry, it does.
Yeah. But even more than that, even more than the whole we planned for this, I think the system's response to problems that are a threat to itself, a total wiping, and then start from ground zero, to build it up again, upgrade. I think that saved it for me, because we see that even in these giant problems, even though the system has created this big mess,
big mess. It's huge.
Yeah. Not only did it foresee the big mess, like, it already has these solutions calculated into it that, like, don't care about individuals. It only cares about perpetuating the status quo.
You mean the classic IT support thing? Have you tried turning it on and off again?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the solution program.
That's what you're going to do. All right, I'm going to turn the system off. I'm going to reboot it. It's fine. It's fine.
Like, it understands that it's under no illusions of its perfection in terms of its ability to control everything. But it says, like, well, we're going to fuck up, but when we do, we will just violently erase the problem. And whoever is collateral damage in that erasure, it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is the status quo will remain, and it will continue. And so, holy shit, like, that to me snatched victory from the jaws of defeat as far as the plot point of Omega Gattle. I was totally into that.
Jill has a speech about it as well, where she basically confirms something that I suggested as where they might be going with it in episode, but when I discussed it in episode 10, which is, it is in itself, like, a function of an imperfect system because it cannot control for every potential outcome. So it still follows that idea that, I mean, Natsume herself says it's a bug like me. So there you go. So it does fit. It is a puzzle piece that fits in the end. But I will wonder if the reason that it does that exists at all is, again, still not because of we want a big action finale versus what to me would have been its narrative utility. Because I still feel you probably could have swapped that out for doing something else. Like, I don't know. But it works, and that's good enough, in my opinion.
Good enough is a way to describe that little plot point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something?
I've just realised we've actually missed a Patreon question.
Oh no!
Because I'm a moron. Because clearly my glasses are terrible. This one comes again from Gogo Say Robo. Have you ever experienced being online for a game being closed down forever? So have either of us played like a ongoing service game that closes down? No, I haven't actually. The only MMO I ever played was World of Warcraft, and that is the cockroach of the group because it just will not die.
It's decided to run itself again from the beginning. While the new one is still going.
No, quite literally, because they did WoW Classic, so you're not wrong actually. But I quit because I moved beyond it. I didn't need to play or want to play it anymore. Really, it was a thing for a time, and it's left its mark on me, not least of which being my handle. But
yeah,
that's it really.
Yeah, I tried an MMO once called Final Fantasy 14.
And I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I know, it's a very small niche kind of thing.
Yeah, sounds like for it's just for randoms, like handful of people, like
Yeah, it's you all wouldn't get it out there. It's super nerdy, so I'll keep this brief and just say, MMOs are just not for me. Everyone was like, oh, this is the best story in Final Fantasy. And I'm like, okay. And so I pushed through a lot of it and then had a shitty experience with people running a dungeon. So I'm like, why am I pushing myself through this when I know that this is just not the kind of experience I enjoy as a video game player?
Well, that's funnily enough part of the reason why I stopped playing it, because I was sick and tired of getting so mad at other people for their failures. So I went over to playing fighting games instead, where I can get mad at the game itself for my failures.
Exactly. Yeah, that's an improvement.
Perfect.
For sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'll ever know this feeling, Emily.
I apologize for missing that out, Gogo. Sorry, Robot, but I will just throw in a quick, brief, amusing anecdote, which was that there was I think it was Clyde Barker, possibly. He did an MMO way back when in like the late 2000s. I don't even recall what it was called. And there was a game shop near where I lived that sold the collector's edition, and it never got bought. I remember reading how the service for that closed down, but for some reason the game shop, either deliberately or ignorantly, continues to have that on sale. So I just imagine this poor person buying this collector's edition for £100 of this MMO. They take it home, they put it on there, put it on the PC, fire up, try to log in. Sorry, servers deactivated 2 years ago. TS, bye.
Aren't you going to be like part of this when the Guilty Gear switches over to the new one? Like if you stayed around in the old version of the game?
I'm already playing it at different MMO as it is anyway. It's called Warui, Deshou.
Of course, yes. I wish you luck.
I do occasionally have like the idea of going back to World of Warcraft, but I don't want to do it because I would not have the spare time to like put into it that I did back then.
Yeah.
I've got responsibilities now, like responsibilities to myself I didn't have then, or rather that I did have them but I just ignored because I'm a moron when I was younger. And also, of course, I have the podcast, which I have to be responsible for as well. So if I did end up playing World of Warcraft, I'd probably get like an hour in on it, and I'd probably get bored. Plus, it would also introduce me again to the idea of, as you say, going into a dungeon. I've got to rely on these 4 random fuckwits to go and play this properly, and they're going to just waste my time. And I have many examples of my own experience of World of Warcraft where relying on others was deeply, deeply painful. So, yeah, no thanks, not... It's an idea I dabble with in my head, but it never goes beyond that.
Okay, so, well, thanks again, patrons, for submitting those questions. The Matrix reference by Gogo. The next point I was going to make was going to be that I appreciated, like, the fact that I think in this in these episodes, we get the reality painted before us that, like, look at everyone in the final battle. It's people that have been on board since the beginning, all the way to like people that have just gotten on board with the cause because they don't want to be blown up. And, doing deep dives into history that I've been doing lately, been reading more, French history. It just underscores the point that, like, political change so rarely, if ever, happens because people want to do the right thing. People are willing to sacrifice their own material well-being and, potential happiness to do the right thing, to, like, bring the least off up to their level if it means that they have to sacrifice. No thanks. It's only when their own livelihood and or safety is threatened that they're willing to get out there and do shit. And this is the case in Decadence with Minato, finally going over to the cause and getting to live his dream of, like, all I've wanted to do is fight by her side one more time, Kaburagi. That was enough for me.
All I've ever wanted to do was have Jill constantly nag me in the ear.
Yeah. So, like, and the show is actually really great about not telling you how to feel about that. And I think that there are kind of multiple contrary ways that you can feel at the same time. Like, I think you could be rightfully annoyed and be like, oh, Minato, welcome to the party, you late motherfucker. Where was your ass before? We sure could have used you. You could have helped in all these different ways, but you were concerned about your own, checkbook relatively speaking.
You're nowhere near as good as your namesake in Persona 3.
Right,
He
right.
died.
Yes,
He
exactly.
fucking died to save the
he
world.
died
what
for
are
this.
you doing here? You're a pencil pusher.
But like, it also, it doesn't force you into that conclusion totally. Like, it still recognizes the fact that, like, people like that do have a part to play in this kind of drastic political change. And like,
you know what's crazy though, like now that you mentioned this is what this show now reminds me of a little bit. It reminds me of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, because in that he was all very much, his stories in that series were all very much about how there is no sudden dramatic shift. Like, it's all based on the patterns of a lot of people, and occasionally an individual can pop up and shift things, but otherwise, like, we're talking over the spans of years that things won't necessarily change. So it reminds me of that. And hey, if I'm comparing this show to classic Asimov, then I suppose it must be at least halfway decent.
Yeah, that's a feather in its cap, right? If you can make that comparison accurately.
Just like Isaac Asimov, Shadon 2020, 5 stars.
Right. And I think, let me see. This is probably the last point that I have written down that we haven't talked about. So this is maybe an idiosyncratic way of looking at what I'm about to talk about, but do you know how they were pulling in the old parts of the Decadence to help power up the canon? I touched on this briefly in our intro segment, but and they kind of made a game out of it to, they used those ingrained instincts of the Gears, like, oh, we're making a game out of it, So yeah, I'm on board. The last mission and shit. Like, the way I sort of saw that was like, those were like past scars. Like, maybe those things had fallen off the Decadence in previous cycles where there had been some kind of uprising, and the system was able to wipe and reboot. And the fact that, Jill and Natsume thought up, like, let's use these to power up what we have now, sort of was this metaphor to me of, like, the uprisings and calls for revolution and actual direct political actions, even if they're unsuccessful, like, can, like, seed these future movements and be a foundation that ultimately leads to a victory and a successful revolution down the road. And I really, really like that. I don't know if they were exactly going for that, but I saw that there, and I thought that was rad.
Yeah, progress is slow, but you can't skip it. You don't get to bypass straight to the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, and so that's the last thing I have. I mean, we talked about the show, the episodes writ large, and the ending. I guess we have to talk about, like, the show as a whole, and, like, you were talking about whether you think it's how you think it measures up to Eizouken.
Oh boy. Oh well. I'll just say in general, like, there's something I've probably not talked about a lot, which is just how incredibly well animated this show is. I mean, the Sakuga folks have been feasting on this, and even the most recent episode, 12, like, you've got, like, animators drawing all of that rubble individually, the lasers flying everywhere. I'll credit the CG as well for not being intrusive or invasive. It felt fine. Like, it didn't feel jarring or distracting as it often can be. The show has been brilliantly storyboarded from start to finish as well. Like, so much taking away from it. It's also quite funny. It never stops, like, it's never dour all the time.
Yeah.
Like, a concept like this could really be kind of
Oh my
dreary.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think maybe I'm also underselling Natsume's involvement in the show, which sounds strange because I'm selling it separate from the story. But the thing to remember is that part of her reason being the show is also to inject some life into it. I mean, here's your Final Fantasy comparison again, crazy enough as this sounds. Like, people give Tidus in Final Fantasy X a really hard time because he's constantly, like, being a dork and he's saying stupid shit and he's got the laughing scene. We all know the laughing scene.
Yeah.
Ha 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 ha. But people seem to miss the forest for the trees on that one, which is that he is a person who has come in from a different world where everyone is miserable all the time because there is literally the existential threat of this giant kaiju coming up and killing everyone. To the point where the whole world is living in like, a subsistence farming Luddite state. But he comes in and suddenly, like, his energy revitalizes people a little bit, gives them hope. And so Natsume fulfills a similar kind of thing here where, okay, we might have our debates about whether or not she got to do much for her own sake in the plot, but make her joie de vivre, if you want to call it that, like, not apart from just being an inspiration for Kaburagi, keeps the show itself light and fresh at times when it's needed. It's never totally distant, though. Like, when it needs to be serious, it's serious. I mean, you get the thing like, for example, the brutal moment when you find Pipe's, like, collar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't see Pipe disappear into dust, but you come back and he's just fucking gone. And you get the scene, of course, when we last see Pipe from Kaguragi's perspective, where he closes the door on him. Literally, like, knowing he'll never see him again. It's framed very sharply and with harsh angles on that one. So yeah, the show is brilliantly animated, brilliantly storyboarded, wonderfully executed. I thought it was great. The only thing that really didn't stick out to me was the music, to be quite honest. But
right. Yeah.
But music not sticking out to me is value neutral because there's only two ways it sticks out. Either I love her, or I think it's a shower of shite. And I didn't think either of those things, so that's fine. I'm not going to worry about that too much. The OP playing over the end, though, like it does that usual anime trick. Here's the big final moment. We're going to get the OP going, and it works for me. There were better times when that's happened, mind you, but it works. I will give it that.
Regarding the humor, I want to quickly say, like, how, like, the humor wasn't, like, how do I say this? It was there, like you said, to even out the mood and the tone, but not just that. I think it also served a thematic purpose, too. Like, if you're talking about, like, how kawaii and different the cyborgs look from the humans, it was funny to see them and, like, hear the tweet, 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 tweet sound effects when they walked around. And but, like, it also was this, like, important story device, like, showing you how kind of fundamentally different life could be depending on your economic and class sort of status. So yeah, It was so cool. Like the humor, it was so good. It was on point and really underrated part about why the show was good, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And as for the rest of it, which we've discussed at length throughout the course of this series, like, I think what's most amazing to me, or one of the most amazing things to me, is that you get that episode 2 twist, and then I'm here like, you've got to deliver on this twist now, because sometimes twists, like in a lot of J.J. Abrams stuff, for example, the whole mystery box shit, the twist itself is the reason that those stories are written, and not because you then intend to do anything good with it.
Fucking M. Night Shyamalan, the king of that shit. Yeah,
it becomes like the twist itself becomes a kind of, I don't know, the purpose rather than the starting point for a mystery, intrigue, or drama. But no, the twist in this one, apart from it does double duty, it both is the inciting thing for a lot of audience members to go, holy shit, this is more than I thought it was going to be. But then they deliver on it. They explore things. You get to see like how people, like, how, like, again, Natsume, robot hand, it's shit, but she could have a new one so easily if she knows the right person. That kind of thing. It's a small point, but it's a small point that fits with the larger idea that this capitalist society living, where literally, like, Kaburagi can buy footage of a dead person.
Right. Yeah.
Which again, I have to stress, that's fucking awful. Like, when you say it like that, but that's what he did. He literally bought, like, this YouTube movie of this person dying.
Yeah.
Which is just fucking crazy. And then you go as far as having the Gadol shit factory as a prison. They are literally shoveling shit. This is not a subtle thing.
No.
This is not your daddy's license printing shit. We are literally going to go and rake Gadol whatever you'll call it,
I just want to say, like, just really briefly, like, they did not spend a whole ton of time on the surveillance state aspect of this, but, like, it was there and I appreciated it, and, like, it played a factor in the story that, like, everything is being recorded and everything is for sale, all that footage.
I mean, all the implications of that are there for you to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I said like about the ending, I want it to be more explicit of what happened. There are times when I think, like in science fiction, that you get set an example. We see Natsume's like death being sold for footage, but then you think to yourself, you see all the other things that are being sold there. What were they selling? Dare I say, were they selling like covert footage of like the humans doing the do? You know, is that something the cyborgs were enjoying? Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they selling footage of like family, like deeply traumatic family arguments? You know, they were basically exploiting the lives of these people without their knowledge, and that's again something you can infer and think of all the horrific ways they were doing it just from that one thing that was more just a utilitarian plot point in intent, but it expands from there.
And you like wonder, how if anyone was watching all of it, or if it was just like, we have to have this because it makes us feel better about the amount of control we have, or because it's often seemed to me like Hugan and other people could have been more well informed on different situations had they watched all the footage. But it's perfectly believable to me that like not even a computer system like could work through the vast amount of footage that is probably being uploaded every single second to the Decadence.
It really does. It really fucking keeps trying to sort through it, but it only ever seems to like do wrong.
Yes.
Ironically. But yeah, and on top of that, like, the action scenes are great. Like I had argued for and against them, but overall I'm for them because you know what, like, it's still exciting to watch. Like, as much as I complain that I wish the final episode wasn't a big action thing, you know what? At least it's still good. That doesn't make it bad by default. I just wish it was something different that could have been better. But no, the fight scenes are always incredible. I really, really like both Kaburagi and Natsume's characters. As our main duo, whether you want to argue the toss about who has the more to do, like, they're both really compelling. They have wonderful chemistry with each other. It was a joy watching them banter and talk with each other. The scenes we had between when they were training, like the fucking 80s montage.
So good.
They were great characters. And I have to again just praise Studio. Not like this is the organic homegrown anime. Like, it doesn't come from like source material. It is their first work, and to have come out swinging so hard like this is just chef's kiss. I was stunned by how good this show was. I just wish that it had been entirely consistent all the way through, but that's such a massive ask that I can't feel annoyed or angry that it wasn't that. There's very, very few people on this planet in any medium who can keep that level of quality from start to finish. Simple as that.
But one of them, it's Masaki Yuasa.
Well, Masaki Yuasa is an anime warlock. We know this.
Yes, we know that.
We know.
Deals with spiritual entities.
Yeah. But I mean, like, to have done that all is incredible. And in any other year, like, I think like last year, for example, Beastars was Man of the Year. No, if Decadence came out last year, there wouldn't have even been a debate in my head. It would have been Decadence easily.
Ooh, that's a much harder discussion for me, but that's a discussion.
Is that a spicy take?
I mean, like, I get it. I mean, I might still agree with you in the end, but it's not an open and shut case for me. Boy, I mean, would you have thought, setting aside the Eizouken comparisons, would you have thought that like the director and writer of Mob Psycho seasons 1 and 2 could shortly after Mob Psycho 2 make something that is like maybe as good as that? I mean, that's such a huge accomplishment to me. Like, it says,
if you'd have told me that they were making something after Mob Psycho 200, and that's what I'm calling it,
please
come at me.
Yep.
That was arguably as good, but was based on original material and not an adaptation of existing stuff.
Yeah.
Also, bear in mind that Mob Psycho 200 is a continuation of existing property, which does grant some advantages. Like, you're familiar with the material, everything's clicked in place, that kind of thing. Like, if you said that, I'd have said, I reckon it'll be decent, but I don't reckon it'll be as good. And then I'd look like a moron, because as it turns out, it is just as good, arguably.
Yeah, I mean, I would have, I would have had reservations. I would not have put money on it, right? I mean, but Tachikawa and Seiko are clearly like a duo to be reckoned with and a duo to watch for in the industry. Like what they will do next. I mean, I think this is like a real established track record of a creative force, and we should definitely keep our eyes peeled for what they do next.
Oh, good luck to them, though. Jesus Christ, I feel, oh, I feel awful for them and elated at the same time because
Yeah, I mean,
this is where, as crazy as it sounds, this is where it gets hard.
oh, I think it. Yeah, I mean, but I would have said the same thing after Mob. I think Mob is one of the best shows ever made, and yet they've done this thing that is great in a totally different way. They're telling a completely different kind of story, and it's manages to be super compelling. I'm totally like, I just have so much respect for what the whole crew, was able to accomplish. I think this is a real achievement. I think, as an original work, like this is probably the best original work that's going to come out this year.
I mean, you know what's funny? You remember when we got to the end of the Isoken discussion, I was like, I feel so bad for everything that follows this. I'm going to just reheat that point and just say, I feel so bad for everything in the fall because what the fuck is going to come along and beat this? But then again, I said that after Isoken and I got proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
like, I don't know anymore.
Re:Zero 2 is coming out, so just hold your.
Well, that already is out. Like,
oh, is it out now? That's just
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I watched the first episode of Re:Zero 2 and I'm like, nah, I'm good. Not because it was bad. But
you didn't like Re:Zero.
No, I liked it. It's the best isekai I've seen, basically. But well, that's also admittedly not much given the competition. But I mean, look. I've been holding off on talking with you about Re:Zero for so long because my dislike or relative dislike of the first season hinged on the fact that they didn't do something at the very end that they did in the light novels, as I understood it, and
right.
I think that was their cowardice on the writers' parts. And now they've kind of sort of delivered on it, but they didn't deliver on it as written in the novels. Again, as I understand it, because I've not read them, and I just thought. Again, I feel like you're copying to what the audience wants rather than wanting to tell a story. So I'm bowing out, but we can discuss that a different day.
Yes, getting back to the show. Yeah, I just I think like Mob was a show that like it had really good ideas in it, and I've talked at length about them before.
100%.
Mm-hmm. But hey,
sorry.
I've talked about them before on the Anime is Lit show, but I think the main strengths of that show were like the characters and the action, and I think the strength of this show is like the ideas and the world building. So again, like it's a different sort of feat that they've accomplished doing this thing. And yeah, I mean, I think. I've said on this stream already, I think the show did accomplish its goals. I think it set out to demonstrate the manner in which people all across the class spectrum and economic spectrum are exploited in all these different ways that we may take for granted or may not take for granted, and how difficult it can be to bring about a change in that status quo, and what it takes to do it, and also just be this like really cool sci-fi story with amazing world building. I mean, I think it totally delivers.
Cyborgs, colorful characters. The lead character or one of the lead characters has a robot hand.
Yes. Yes.
I can't contain the power in my hand. And then Kaburagi just says, what are you doing?
Yeah.
that again would be a scene I could see happening. But that's the joy also I think of these characters in that I can just imagine because their chemistry is that good, I can imagine all this stuff. And it just makes me smile every time I think of it. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Highest marks for this one. I mean, it may not end up being my anime of the year. I think I might prefer Eizouken by a bit. But it's really
It's
close.
it's a bit. That's the thing. I again must restate.
Really close.
I think Azakin is the better show, but
Yeah.
it's just.
And they're so different.
Close.
I mean, I can see someone preferring this over Azokin because of that they like shows that try to do this thing more than they like shows that try to do the Azokin thing. You know, they're trying to accomplish different things. But yeah, this show ruled. I'm gonna give the current batch of episodes probably like I'll say 4.25 cracked HUDs out of 5.
Probably going to give you the same. Give it the same. Oh God, I'm now got to think of a witty scoring thing. I wasn't prepared for this. I should have thought of this ahead of time. Normally I do, but I don't this time. Blah, blah, blah. I know. I'll give it 4.25 go-go gadget helicopter hands out of 5.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah. For the show as a whole, though, we've got to rate that as well, haven't we?
Oh man, for me it's a 5. I'm gonna go. I mean, I know, like, I grade these things a little bit differently than you.
You're nicer. That's the main thing. You have a heart. Like you don't have a lump of coal in the chest cavity where your heart would be. I do.
Well, look, I just think my scale is different. I mean, I think.
Oh, so I'm metric and you're imperial.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I'm the baking.
There we go.
I'm the baking of the show, and you are the, I don't know, distance.
Science, the science one.
Right. So, like, yeah, I mean, just in terms of, like, enjoyment and, like you were pointing out, like, following through and realizing the huge promise that it had early on. I mean, it gets full marks from me. I can't think of, like, an element that, like, in, like, the broad strokes of it, I thought was, like, some kind of failure or huge disappointment. The ending, again, because most of episode 12 was the last part of the fight, that ties in to everything to me that was pretty great about the show. And then, like, the last stuff, brought down the ending. But like, again, I don't think, like, a 5 for 5 means it's, like, this perfect show. I think it just means, like, I've enjoyed it. I've gotten maximal enjoyment from it. I've enjoyed it an incredible amount. It's fulfilled my fan heart and my brain, and provided me with a lot to think about. Really good discussions in chat, in the Discord, with you on pod. It's been a delight, like, something to look forward to every 3 weeks when we get together and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Normally on this grading curve we go by, like, units of a quarter, so 0.25. But fuck it, I'm going to tear down the system. I'm not going to give Decadence a 5 out of 5 because I think that for me the ending is just enough of a flub that it isn't, like, maximal, as you say. But everything else was pretty much exactly what the show promised. It, like, I've said before about the idea of when shows set out contracts with the audience, like, here's what you can expect. And yes, it took the contracts in the first episode and then tore up and set on fire, but it gave us an even better one as a result. And it delivered on pretty much all of that, save for the final 2 episodes where there was some flubbing. It's like I said, made the landing, stuff fell out of the overhead locker, but it landed. And up until that point, the ride was buttery smooth. I loved every part of the show. It's been a joy talking about it. Like, I'm so glad we had it in this year in particular, because Lord knows I did not want to cover a shit, like, second stream show. We
already did that this year.
Yeah, great. And no doubt we'll end up doing once a round off the year as well.
Oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that. There's surely something good coming along. We don't even have the poll up. Don't despair.
We need to sort that, but we'll get to that. So yeah, in the end, my score for Decadence is going to be 4.0 9
Oh,
out of 5. It's
yay,
just that
yay.
close. Isaacin gets the full 5, of course, by comparison,
Mhm.
and everything else. Well, no one gives a fuck about anything else we've covered this year. These two have easily been the best things we've talked about. Okay, look, that's me being unfair because I think we did cover Julia Richard this year, which was pretty good.
That was a really good show. I liked that a bunch.
I
And
enjoyed that a
Rakugo.
fair bit. Oh yes, Rakugo. I'm going to discount Rakugo not because it's bad, just because it's not from this year. But like I'm talking like as in stuff released this year. If you want to be pedantic about it. But,
Was Julia Richard this year? Wow, it feels so long ago.
Yeah, I
Holy
know.
cow.
I don't believe it either. It feels a bit spooky in my head because we were covering Kabuki Show last year and up till Christmas. That's
Oh,
also when we were covering Vinland.
oh, so Sherlock wasn't this year that we talked about it. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so that was late 2019, and then Julia Richard for January to March. What do we do from March to June?
It can't have been that good if I can't remember.
What did we talk about on this on this format? Someone in
that
chat
feeling when you
save us.
that feeling when you don't remember the stuff you've covered. Well, we had listeners as the mainline one,
Yeah.
which was bleh.
Yeah.
That was
What did we
uninteresting.
talk about while we were talking about listeners? Holy cow. Given was last year. Listeners was
Yep.
Stream of Thought. You're gonna force me to go look it up.
Yesterday. There we go. It was yesterday.
Yes. That was quite good.
Yeah. That was quite good until it wasn't. But well, you know.
Yeah, that's one where the ending
I've just realized we could throw, in my opinion, yesterday, even Decadence. I can diagnose what's wrong with them. They all suffer from the erased Violet Evergarden syndrome, where the show ends prematurely because it just runs out of narrative drive. We can debate that about Decadence for sure.
I think that's totally debatable.
But you know that's totally a crippling condition that affects more anime than it should.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's.
I mean, are you suffering from Violet Evergarden erase syndrome?
Right.
Do you suffer from a limp dick's ending, unsatisfying character resolution, and filler?
Right.
If so, consult your doctor.
Yeah, do you it's a pacing problem, right? I mean,
Yep.
like, just try to cram everything into the last, or stretch things out too far. Anyway, I think that's probably gonna do it for the pod, and for Decadence. Sorry to see you go, but we'll look forward to what these creators are doing next, and second stream will continue. So let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think it'll be 4 more weeks before we hit this again. Since we've done it out of order. And there'll be 2 more free streams of thought before we get to the next second stream.
Final one on BNA and then the first one of whatever series we cover next for that one.
Yeah. And there may be a break between the old shows and new. But this is something that I'm bringing up for the first time ever on the air. But we'll talk about it off air. That I have something in mind that might be good to as something to split the 2 seasons. But we'll figure it all out. We'll still be streaming something for you all each week. If you want to get everything that we do each and every week, head on over to patreon.com/Warui Deshou, WARUI Subscribe. If you want everything, it's just $5 a month, the Viking Experience tier. Those on the $3 tier, the Kind of Money tier, would get this stream, second stream. But they would miss out on our Deshou the Third, where we're currently talking about Descending Stories Rakugo Shinju.
We're not talking about Descending Stories, that's the second season.
Oh, well, what is this one called?
Showa Rako Shinjo.
Oh, just Showa Genroku. I thought Showa Genroku meant Descending Stories, but that's neither here nor there. Blah. So anyway, we're talking about the first season of Rakugo. So, and we have lots of content drops of things in between. Catherine is very happy you broke your own scale.
Start smashing shit up now. I'm just gonna just literally start ripping all my cans off that thing. Like, if we ever do a really bad show, by the way, I guarantee I will do that live on air. I will literally start throwing stuff around just for the fun of it.
That'd be fun to see. If you are not able to financially get on board, totally A-okay. You can still do your part to help us by heading over to Apple Podcasts and giving us not just a rating, but a review. If you write in the review. I see we've gotten a fair few ratings. We've gotten a fair few of the old 5 snake reviews. I'm sorry, ratings. But we haven't gotten people actually writing what's good about the show, which I do realize takes some effort.
You can just essentially say that you enjoy the shine of the lights in my living room off my fabulous dome.
You could say
Please
that.
don't do that. Talk
you
about
could
the
say
anime.
that. You could say that. But if you just, doing that little thing really helps us. It helps us broaden our reach, and which helps us in all ways. You can follow us on Twitter as well if you want to interact with us. Or you could reach us directly. Shadon, how do they get in contact with you on Twitter?
Shadon1010. That's Shadon and then 1010. Don't type 1010 at the end. That account is terrible and decrepit. Don't go there. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't even know if it actually exists. I just assume it's some sort of psychopath who pretends to be me, but like is like the Shadon Alta version, if you want to call it that. So yeah, at Shadon1010 on Twitter. Hit me up about anything and everything. Why the hell not?
And I am the Subtle Doctor on Twitter. And you can find our stuff on you're watching now on YouTube, but we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Pods, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, except SoundCloud. No longer on SoundCloud. Pour one out for the SoundCloud. But everywhere else, you can find us. Shadon has got more Final Fantasy coming up, Final Fantasy VIII. I'll be doing some more Banner of the Maid. And more anime podcasts to come. More polls for the Patreon to decide what we're going to do now that these shows are either over or our coverage of them is wrapping up. So lots going on. Get involved. Head to the Patreon. Head to our Twitter. Thanks, everybody, for coming by. We sure appreciate
Thank you.
Everything in chat. And appreciate your views on the VOD and such like. And we would love to hear from you with any feedback that you have. We've got Twitter, we have Discord for patrons, we have an electronic mail inbox, waterydeshow@gmail.com. And
sounds futuristic.
Yeah, it's definitely the way we're going. The world is trending towards email as its preferred form of communication. I don't know if you knew this, but it's happening. Get ready for it. God. I need to end the show now, so embrace each other, everyone. To the ends of the universe.
Good night.